I've been living with this Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 right behind me for around 2 months now, and over those 2 months I've tested this bike in all types of conditions. I've used it as a commuter, I've taken it out on day trips, and of course multi-day adventure rides as well. It's been on-road, off-road, in the sand, in the mud, hard tracks and easy tracks, throw in a few crashes as well. But now it's time for me to give you all my honest opinion on the bike. Should you spend your hard-earned cash on a Himalayan 450? Is it a good adventure bike? What do I like about it? What do I not like about it? All will be revealed very shortly in this video, guys, so stick around to the end to see if I myself would buy a Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. Hey two all adventurers, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well as usual. If you're new here guys, my name's Josh and this channel is about everything to do with motorcycle adventure. So if you're into that, you've come to the right place. We do everything from bike builds, bike reviews, long adventures, tips and tricks and gear reviews as well. So if you're into all of that kind of stuff guys, please hit that subscribe button. I'd love for you to stick around. And if any of you are interested in supporting the channel in a more direct way guys, check the links down below in the description of this video. You can head over to the website, you can get yourself some merch, you can grab a GPX file there from one of my previous adventures and head it on your own adventure, and you can make donations to the channel as well. And as well as that guys, make sure that you support the companies that support the channel. Krieger offering 5% off if you use the code JOSHJB all the way up until the end of December this year. So jump over to krieger.com.au, you can get 5% off any of their gear. It's on Australian orders only. And as well guys, I'm heading on another adventure with the Endeavour Motorcycle Tours team next year in January. If any of you guys want to come on that, make sure you use the code JB10 and come on the waterfall tour. It's going to be a great ride. You can come for a ride with me and make sure you use that code and save yourself 10%. Alright guys, with all of that out of the way, let's jump into the Himalayan 450 and see what I think about it. So for any of you that don't know guys, this bike behind me isn't actually mine. I've borrowed it from Royal Enfield and I've been lucky enough to have it for around 2 months now. I've been running the bike in completely stock form to give it a true test. All that I've done to the bike guys is I've added a quad lock up front on the handlebars there just to use my phone for a bit of a GPS, and then I've strapped some luggage to the bike when I've headed out, and that's all I've done. I've left everything completely stock, all the way down to the tyres that come stock on this bike, which I'll talk about more later in the video. So guys, what is the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450? It's a single cylinder thumper engine, 452 cc's to be exact, putting out around about 40 horsepower. So it's not a rocket by any stretch, but for off-road riding, it's got enough power to get the job done for an average rider like myself. And even on road, it's just enough to sit on 110 kilometers an hour comfortably. It's a 6-speed with a 21-inch front tire and a 17-inch rear. The 21-inch front is a must in my opinion for an off-road bike, so it's great to see that they've chucked that on there. Some of the other features guys, it has a ride-by-wire throttle, 4 riding modes, you've got the TFT display up front, 200 millimeters of suspension travel, a USB-C charge point on the bars ready to go, and you've got a rear carry rack and some crash bars on there as well. The bike is packed with features, and for just over $9,000 right away guys here in Australia, it really is crazy value. Throw some soft luggage at this bike and you really are good to go. So value for money with this bike is a big tick straight away. Now let's talk comfort and ergonomics on the bike. For me, I found the Himalayan 450 to be super comfortable. I'm bang on 6 foot tall, and the rider triangle on this bike works really, really well for me. It's set up nearly perfect for someone my size, so that's been great. The seating position and standing position are both great for me. Looking at the bike, I thought it looked really short and the standing position would be unnatural, but I was wrong on that. I could stand up for long periods of time with no issues at all. And then for sitting, it was just as good. The seat is ultra comfortable. I found myself getting lazy and sitting down on the trails just because the seat is so damn comfy. And then you've got the screen up front, which was great for those blacktop sections and the freeways. I like the height as it is. I think any taller and it's going to be a bit of a nuisance when you go off-road into those technical sort of sections. It might get in the way a little bit. And lastly, those foot pegs, they're also great, at a great height for myself at least, for both sitting and standing as well. Sometimes I find my knees are up a bit too high on the sitting position on some bikes, but on this Himalayan 450, it felt really natural for me. They're nice and wide as well, which is great. Makes it nice and easy to find your foot placement when you're standing up on those tougher tracks. I did find myself banging the foot pegs on some rocks in some harder technical sections, but that's probably more a lack of ground clearance on the bike rather than the peg placement itself. So let's move on to the engine and gearbox. Now I know being a thumper engine, a lot of people out there are going to expect this thing to just rattle you to pieces on those freeways and those highway sections, but it just isn't the case with this bike. Now I found the bike to be nice and smooth, especially for a thumper engine. It can sit on 100 to 110 kilometers an hour pretty easily in 6th gear, so no issues there. It's got a nice and smooth power delivery across the whole rev range, and the bike really can lug itself along in a higher gear, which is great for off-road sections, so you don't have to be banging through the gears quite as much out there. Now I did find the limit a few times, but I found myself in most technical slower sections I could stick to 2nd gear and the bike would just keep on chugging away. But it really is geared well, guys, from 1st gear all the way up to 6th gear. I think Royal Enfield have done a great job with the choice of gearing on this bike. Now the only issue that I came across with the gearbox was I had a lot of instances where I'd hit neutral on the way from 1st to 2nd. I'm not sure why it was doing that, but it did happen to me a lot on my recent 3-day adventure with the bike. Maybe it's due for a service, or maybe I didn't have the revs up enough, but sometimes it would take a couple of goes to get the bike into 2nd. Let me know down in the comments below, guys, if any of you had this bike have had that drama. I'd be curious to know if it's just me or if it's a thing that's happened across the board with a few of these bikes, so let me know down below in the comments. But apart from that, the engine and gearbox are great. Only time will tell about the longevity of these engines, guys, but first impressions are really, really good. Now let's talk about fuel economy, guys. The Himalayan 450 comes as stock with a 17-litre fuel tank on board, which is great for any adventure bike really, but even better when it's a little 450. Now when it comes to fuel economy, guys, obviously it's a story of how long's a piece of string. It's always different for everyone. Everyone rides different weights, carry different luggage, different conditions, different riding styles, all of that. So take that all into consideration, but I myself found the economy of this bike to be really, really good. On my recent 3-day adventure, I calculated the fuel usage as I went, and on average it was around about the 3.5 litres per 100 kilometres, and that's exactly the same as what the dash was telling me. It was always around that 3.5 litres per 100 once I used that calculator. So really, really good fuel economy there on this bike, and that was all done with a mixture of dirt and tar, slow and fast riding, a bit of everything really. So with a 17-litre tank, you're looking at a fuel range of somewhere between 400 to possibly 500 kilometres on a tank. Obviously, as I already said, it depends on your conditions, type of riding, etc. But that's a really great fuel range to have on a bike straight from the showroom floor, guys. It's ready to tackle those long distances between fuel stops that we have here in some parts of Australia, especially the outback. So let's talk about that all-important suspension, guys. I found on this bike that the suspension was great for 90% of the time. Most of the riding, it really did a great job. Along those general fire trails, twin trail type tracks, it soaked up all of that stuff easy enough. But I did find its limit a few times, and it did bottom out a couple of times as well. A couple of washouts, it snuck up on me, bottomed it out in the rear with a bit of a thud. I did have some luggage on board at the back, so that could have played a factor as well. I also bottomed it out when sending it over a few erosion mounds, having a little bit too much fun, but got to do that when you're out on the tracks. Now remember, guys, it is an adventure bike, so it's not particularly designed to be jumped like I was doing, but it was good to test out the suspension's limits. So for most conditions and most type of riders, guys, the suspension's great, especially when you again consider this bike's price point. I didn't just any preload on the rear spring, so that could also help out when carrying some luggage. Just something to think about. But overall, guys, suspension does a pretty good job. So let's talk about the tyres, guys. These ones that come stock on the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. I did mention earlier that I would be talking a little bit more about these tyres, and there's a good reason for that. Now, in my honest opinion, guys, these tyres that come stock on the bike are absolutely crap, and you should definitely change them as soon as you get one of these bikes if you purchase one. They're just not good for what the bike is designed for, which is adventure, and in Australia at least, you're going to want something a bit more aggressive for the off-road stuff. On road, these tyres are great. I had plenty of fun through the twisties on them, but when it comes to off-road, they just aren't up to it. I found myself a lot of the time riding the bike at say 60 to 70% of how I normally would ride, just due to these tyres. Now, as you've already seen in some of the footage, it can be done. You can ride on these tyres. I really did want to leave the bike in its stock form and test it out, and I've had a blast. But the crash I had a few weeks ago, I put it down to these tyres, and anytime I hit mud on the tracks, the tyres basically became slicks. So the first thing I'd be doing if I got this bike would be getting a more aggressive tyre for some more confidence off-road. So just a quick summary, guys. 3 things that I really like on this bike. First thing is the fuel economy. Really, really good fuel range on this bike from stock. So that's really great to have on a bike straight off the showroom floor. Second thing I really, really liked was the comfort on this bike. I could sit on that seat all day with no issues. And as I said earlier, guys, that rider triangle is really set up well for me. Found it super, super comfortable on this bike, whether I was standing or sitting. So that was great for those long days. And the third thing I really liked was the luggability of the bike, which I've already spoken about a little bit, but it was really great to get out on those technical trails, be able to put it in second gear, third gear, and not have to worry too much about going up and down the gears too much out on the tracks. But as well as that, guys, 3 things that I disliked on the bike. First thing is its ground clearance. I feel like it lacks that just a little bit. I found myself bumping into a few big rocks and boulders out there on some of the tracks, so I'm not used to sitting that low on a bike, so that's one down point that I would put on the bike. The second thing and the third thing, I've mentioned both of them already, but the second one is those neutral bumps. I just kept hitting neutral, not really sure what it is, if it was me, but not something I really liked about the bike. And the third thing is obviously those tyres, guys. They just lack the grip when it comes to the off-road. So the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, guys, really is a great little package. Comes with absolutely everything you need to get out there and start your adventures. For the price point of $9,190 right away in Australia, it really is crazy to me to see what they've included on this bike. You could get this bike straight off the showroom floor, change the tyres and throw some soft luggage on, and you could ride this thing anywhere you're willing to take it. You've got the fuel range, the comfort, and all the features you need, such as 12-volt power, a rear carry rack, and some crash bars, etc. It's a bike that handles great on road, does a decent job on the easier off-road tracks, can be a bit more of a handful in the tougher stuff, but it will get the job done. I believe it's a bike aimed at an adventure rider beginner, or even someone looking to downsize from their big twin cylinder adventure bike. It really will suit a whole range of different types of riders. So guys, sadly, my time with the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 has come to an end. I've got to give the bike back very shortly, but the big question that all of you probably want to know, would I buy one of these bikes for myself? Now my answer, guys, is a no. Now the reason for that isn't anything to do with the bike being bad, nothing like that. It's just a few personal choices, I guess, and the type of riding that I do. Now this bike weighs around the 200 kilogram mark when you're full of fuel, and if I've got some luggage on there, it's probably going to be a touch over 200 kilograms. So for the type of riding I like to do, which is mostly off-road and usually some harder technical stuff, this just isn't the bike for me. And the second reason is just the looks of the bike, guys. Looks are a very personal thing when it comes to choosing your own motorcycles. I'm just not a massive fan of the overall look of this bike, guys, so that's my personal choice, but I know a lot of you out there really like the look of the bike, even out on the road and out on the tracks. I come across a few people that seen the bike and they all had plenty of questions asking what it was, or even if they knew what it was, some of them had one already and they wanted to know how the bike was going. So I know there's plenty of love out there for the Himalayan 450, but it's just not for me. But that's not to say I don't think it's a great adventure bike, guys. I really think it's a great bike for someone just starting out. Really cheap price, it's got everything on it that you need. It's a really good start point for someone who just wants to get out there and have some fun. But that's enough from me, guys. You've heard what I think about the Himalayan 450. I want to hear what you guys have to say, so jump down into the comments below. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Would you buy one? Maybe you already have one. I want to hear your thoughts on how the bike's going, and if you still like it, you're still happy with your purchase. Let me know all of that down below in the comments. So just quickly before we wrap this one up, guys, a massive thank you to Royal Enfield Australia. Thanks for loaning me this bike for a couple of months. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks to Robbie from MX Store for putting me in contact with the right people to make this happen. Thanks so much to everyone who made this possible. I really appreciate it. But thanks again to all you two adventurers for tuning into this video. Like the video if you did enjoy it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, guys. Hopefully we'll have some more bike reviews coming in the near future. Ride safe out there in your own two-wheel adventures, guys. See you in the next one.